So friends, state attorneys general are not letting up. They're stepping up. They're stepping up their legal challenges to Donald Trump's lawlessness and unconstitutionality. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, states are not only bringing legal challenges, filing lawsuits, attacking Donald Trump's lawlessness, but the state attorneys general, the state AGs, are crushing it. Get ready for a truly jaw-dropping statistic regarding how Donald Trump's Department of Justice is faring in court. But as always, let's start with the new reporting. This from the Washington State Standard. Headline: Washington's Attorney General sees no signs of legal battles with Trump letting up. And that article begins, Washington's State Attorney General, Nick Brown, warned in mid-April that the Trump administration's actions put the country near the precipice of a constitutional crisis. His comments, alongside fellow state attorneys general in Colorado, came shortly after the White House defied court orders to return a Maryland man the federal government had wrongfully sent to El Salvador under the president's immigration crackdown. 6 weeks later, Attorney General Brown shies away from using that term, but says President Donald Trump's disregard for some court rulings, especially in immigration cases, has made the circumstances around how he is wielding executive power much more dangerous. This from Attorney General Brown. Quote, whether or not we're in a constitutional crisis, that's somewhat of an academic debate, the Democratic Attorney General told reporters before a town hall Monday, alongside his counterparts from Oregon and California. Quote, in my mind, we are in a crisis. Call it what you want. It's been a whirlwind few months for AG Brown, who took office in January. Later that month, the day after Trump took office, Brown sued over the president's executive order seeking to restrict birthright citizenship. And friends, you may recall the birthright citizenship case where Donald Trump thought he could just sign an executive order and invalidate part of the Constitution, the part that guarantees citizenship to people born in the United States. Recall that case was presided over in the trial court by Judge John Coffenauer, who was appointed by President Ronald Reagan. And some of what Judge Coffenauer said about Donald Trump's executive order trying to revoke the guarantee of birthright citizenship, the judge said, yeah, that executive order is blatantly unconstitutional. And he asked the perhaps rhetorical question, where were the lawyers in the room when Trump signed that executive order? All my editorial edition. Back to the article. Since then, Attorney General Brown filing his first lawsuit against Trump, he's filed 19 more lawsuits over the threats to gender-affirming care, election systems, and cuts to a host of federal agencies and funding opportunities. Some of that litigation is playing out in federal courtrooms in Seattle. Those cases have led to court orders blocking Trump's actions, but those cases are not fully settled. Oregon and California are plaintiffs in even more lawsuits than Washington. And Attorney General Brown guaranteed more litigation to come. More litigation to come is music to my ears. Why? Well, because Donald Trump's third-rate DOJ lawyers can't litigate their way out of a paper bag. Now, friends, have you ever heard the DOJ which was my professional home for decades, have you ever heard the DOJ brag and boast about having a 99% conviction rate, at least in criminal cases? Well, that may be accurate, but it sure doesn't tell the full story. Please put a pin in that, because I'm going to pop that particular balloon in just a minute. But first, I want to focus on this truly jaw-dropping statistic. This from Mark Elias's terrific organization, the Democracy Docket. Headline: Trump's stunning streak of losses in lower courts. And that article begins: while President Donald Trump has had mixed success before the Supreme Court, he's getting crushed in the lower courts. The Trump administration has lost a shocking 96% of rulings in federal district courts so far this month, according to a recent analysis by Adam Bonica, a professor of political science at Stanford. Bonica's data indicates that judges across the ideological spectrum are ruling against Trump at similar rates. He's lost 72% of the rulings issued by Republican-appointed judges and 80% of the rulings by Democratic-appointed judges. So Donald Trump's DOJ lawyers are losing 96% of the rulings in court. That is staggering. You know, given that DOJ almost always wins in court, what can be gleaned from that historic losing streak? Well, first and foremost, it seems like Donald Trump is doing unlawful and unconstitutional stuff 96% of the time, at least as measured by the results in these legal challenges. And the DOJ lawyers that Pam Bondi and Donald Trump are sending into court are not the best, they're not the brightest, and for those who make unsupportable arguments in favor of Donald Trump's lawlessness, not the most ethical. So I say to the state attorneys general, the state AGs, keep the lawsuits coming. Keep challenging Donald Trump's lawlessness and unconstitutionality in court. Okay, friends, now let me finish up with what I referenced a minute ago, how the Department of Justice is forever boasting that they have a 99% conviction rate, at least in criminal cases. And I do believe that is largely an accurate figure, but it only tells part of the story. And here's why, and this is where I have to speak the full truth, based on what I know about the Department of Justice, having worked there for decades. Federal prosecutors have lots and lots of leeway to decide which cases they will take to trial. So, for example, they'll initiate a grand jury investigation, and if they conclude that, well, you know, we could probably bring an indictment, but the evidence is not that strong and we run the risk of losing at trial, they can decline to indict. One of the things that federal prosecutors can do that state court prosecutors can't do is they can take a case in which a federal crime has been committed and they can say, well, you know what, this person also violated state laws. So this case is not terribly strong. Let's kick it to the states. Let's let the state prosecutors, the district attorneys, the Commonwealth's attorneys, the state attorneys handle it. And they can get rid of weak cases or cases where they feel that a conviction is less than certain. Not all prosecutors do it, but a lot of the federal prosecutors do that because they have the luxury of doing it. And so think about it. If you were trying cases that you only thought were sure things, were bulletproof, what might your conviction rate look like? Now, let me hasten to add, there is no such thing as a bulletproof case or a sure conviction at trial, because juries can do anything they darn well please once they retire to deliberate. But in my experience, and this is something I railed against as a federal prosecutor, Federal prosecutors take too few cases that can be taken federally, in which we have federal jurisdiction, in which we have what we call a federal hook. But often, federal prosecutors end up kicking those cases to the states. So I think it is not only an unduly high conviction rate, 99%, but I think it does a disservice to the American people, because you need to take difficult but righteous, difficult cases to trial. You have to run the risk of losing some cases if you're really going to serve the victims, serve the community, serve the people of the United States, which in a very real sense is who federal prosecutors represent, the interests of the people of the United States. So as you can tell, I may have been a pretty good prosecutor, but I was a lousy bureaucrat because I never did toe the party line. And so when I get a chance to talk about that boast 99% conviction rate, you know, I like to sort of give people the rest of the story. I think it is an misleadingly inflated conviction rate. However, I don't want any of that to take away from the fact that DOJ wins in the overwhelming majority of the time when they're in court, that is in criminal cases and in civil cases. And the fact that Donald Trump's lawyers, DOJ lawyers, are going in and losing 96% of the rulings tells you everything you need to know about Trump's lawlessness and unconstitutionality, because judges appointed by Democrat presidents and Republican presidents are overwhelmingly ruling against Donald Trump and his administration and his DOJ lawyers, because that's what the facts and the law and the Constitution militate. And because justice matters. Thank you, friends, for bearing with me on that last little rant at the end there. As always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.